Board of Education meeting on May 9th, 2024. It is now 6:33 and we're calling the meeting to order. I'm going to invite everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag. All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 3.1, which is the acceptance of our agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions proposed for the agenda this evening? Seeing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Item 3.2, looking for a motion to approve the minutes from the last month. Hey, Mrs. Haynes.
Recommendation, resolve that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education approves the following minutes. April 4th, 2024, special minutes for finance and facilities. April 11th, 2024, regular minutes. And April 25th, 2024, special minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Mrs. Alexander. Mrs. Anderson, can we have a roll call?
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Haynes?
Yes.
Trustee Anderson? I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Which brings us to item number 4 on the agenda, which is our first opportunity for public comments. Let me read you the rules. A person who would like to address the board on an agenda or non-agenda item may complete a note card located inside the boardroom and place the card in the basket prior to the citizen public comment period. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. If you need more time, you are offered a second opportunity to address the board at the end of the meeting with an additional 3 minutes. Please address the board as a whole and not individually. Public comment is not intended for the exchange of dialogue. This is a time for members of the public to express their views. We are paying attention to your comments and appreciate them. However, school board members will not respond to public comment during the meeting. Questions that arise from public comment will be referred to the superintendent or their designee for review, study, and a response. I'd like to thank you in advance for your cooperation. So far, we have 2 members of the public who've asked to speak. You can still fill out a card if you'd like to at this time. Our first member is Kate Chambers.
Hi.
Welcome.
Right. Yeah, stopwatch. I don't think I'll go over 3 minutes. Dear members of the Royal Oak School Board of Education, my name is Kate Chambers. I'm a teacher at Royal Oak Middle School. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and many other staff members who wish to vocalize their admiration and support of our administrative team. We felt compelled to speak out due to some of the negative comments and concerns about ROMs brought forth on social media from members of the community. First, we would like to comment on our wonderful assistant principals, Dan Colligan and Jason Henshaw. These 2 individuals have connected with our staff and students in a variety of positive ways. We consistently feel supported and heard by them, which is creating a close community of teaching and learning. We all feel that these 2 work well together and are able to lead Royal Oak Middle School alongside our principal, Kristen Meldrum. Kristen has been an exemplary leader. Her dedication, passion, and care for students is evident to us daily and has helped foster a nurturing and supportive environment for both students and staff. Her vision for our school was clear from the start, and she inspired all of us to see it and believe in it too. Kristen has fought for Tier 2 intervention for students. She was instrumental in creating an MTSS structure that is clear and transparent. This program has been able to add gen ed social work, an MTSS data position, and inspire other districts to use this type of model. We have been able to identify students who may need Tier 2 support with academics as well as behaviors early and create a plan to support them. Moreover, Kristen pushes her staff to be their best. She has helped to arrange teacher labs for Oakland County, hosted by ROMs, encouraged staff to present at the Launch into Learning, and played a role in 3 staff members presenting at a national conference in Phoenix this summer. She values the passions of each teacher and gets to know them, going out of her way to lend support. We feel very strongly that even through excellent leadership, new ideas, and quality time spent planning, there are still barriers to making ROMS the best it can be. Our staff believes that through changes in the structure of our middle school, it would help increase safety, happiness, and relationships among staff and students, and will decrease fighting, fear, and frustration. Suggestions our staff believe in are team teaching, lessening the number of students in the building and/or adding another middle school, and adding to our administrative team. We ask that the board continue to support our administrative team as they support their staff. It is evident that their ideas work. Our administrative team has brought forth new policies and supported teacher-driven initiatives. Our new phone policy has helped to stimulate in-person conversations at lunch and reduce the amount of online bullying. Feedback was taken from teachers and used to choose what this might, we have also been utilizing the Character Strong program to enrich the social emotional learning of the students. Feedback was taken from teachers and used to choose what this might look like. In closing, I want to express our sincere gratitude for their outstanding leadership and unwavering commitment to the success and well-being of everyone at Royal Oak Middle School. These three are shaping the future of our community, and we are better because of them. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Diana Darland.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Diana Darland, and I'm here with Deb Olszewski and Jeb Bettis, and to represent the South Oakland County chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, and to thank the Royal Oak School Board of Education for agreeing to proclaim June 7th National Gun Violence Awareness and Wear Orange Day in the school district. As the Wear Orange proclamation will highlight when it's read later, it is so important to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence and to do more to end this uniquely American health crisis. In fact, Americans are 26 times more likely to die by gun homicide than people in other high-income countries. And tragically, gun violence has become the #1 leading cause of death for U.S. teens, children and teens. As the school shooting in Oxford demonstrated, gun violence can happen in any community. We all need to do everything we can to prevent these incidents from occurring. The recent passage of 4 gun safety laws in Michigan is certainly a movement in the right direction. The newly minted secure storage law, called Public Act 17 of 2023, requires individuals to keep weapons unloaded and locked if a minor is likely to be on the premises, and failure to do so in connection with an act of gun violence has become a crime. Members of our Moms Demand Action group are available to make gun safety and secure storage presentations to the Board of Education, to your individual school PTAs, or any other groups in the school district. One program that we have found to be very effective and well-received is called Be Smart. It is a framework for parents, caretakers, and community leaders to use to keep our kids safe through secure storage measures and open lines of communication about guns and gun safety. Please do let us know if you would like more information on how we can work together to ensure that Royal Oak schools continue to be the exceptional and safe places of learning that they should be. Thank you.
Right, see no other public comment. We're moving on to agenda item 5.1, which is the Jane Skindry Award. I'd like to invite Ms. Danielle Truesdale.
Hi, I'm Danielle Truesdale, the director of Adams Early Childhood Center, and I am here to share a little information about Lynn Legg, who's been a part of Royal Oak Schools she's been with us 31 years. working in the field for over 40. Lynn is part of our early intervention, early on is used interchangeably, which program, which means that she works with families in their home, with children with developmental delays from birth to their 3rd birthday. So they are, Melanie Palmieri is also one of their team members. We have 15 teachers in the district that serve in this role. Not about early intervention, but I do want to say that we were pioneers of the model that is used currently in Oakland County. We developed it. Lynn was integral in developing this service model of year-round service in families' homes so that parents are learning how to work with their families. And that we started 15 years ago. So often Lynn is pulled in to other districts to help develop the program. She works very closely with Oakland County to help support all the families of children, our youngest population. There are times where we get phone calls when babies are born and they are 2 or 3 days old. They may be born with Down syndrome, so it's known right away that there's some developmental delays. We are also fortunate to know it is a fact that people will say, move to Royal Oak because their early intervention program is so strong. And they come and they feel loved and supported and they stay. And they're with us all the way through. Some of them from 2 days old all the way up to 26 years old if they go through the Trails program. So anyway, I wanted Melanie Palmieri to come and talk some specifics about the award that Lynn was so greatly honored to receive just last week from the state of Michigan.
Thanks, Danielle. Not just families come to Royal Oak, but I came to Royal Oak as a staff member because of the early intervention program here and the work that Lynn did and her team did. So the Jane Scandiary Award for Excellence in Early Intervention, Early Childhood Special Education is presented by the Michigan Division for Early Childhood of the Council for Exceptional Children. This annual award honors an outstanding Michigan professional for contributions to the field of early intervention or early childhood special education, or an individual who has made major and significant contributions to young children with special needs and their families in the state of Michigan. On behalf of the Royal Oak Early Intervention Team, I'm honored tonight to present to you the 2024 Jane Scandiary Award recipient, Royal Oak's own Lynn Legg. A physical therapist by training, Lynn prefers the title early interventionist, and with her 40-plus years of serving families of children with a variety of developmental delays and medical needs, this is what she truly embodies. Lynn has a broad and thorough knowledge of early child development and is an incredible source of information. She has served in the Royal Oak School District for 31 years, with most of that time devoted to the early intervention team. Lynn was part of the original team who established the district's Birth to 3 program using the primary service provider model, which prioritizes servicing children in their natural environments, their homes. Lynn is also employed by the Oakland Schools Early On program, where she serves as a caregiver educator, leading classes for families on various areas of child development. Lynn finds great joy in her work. She loves to witness babies and toddlers develop new skills and to see their caregivers gain confidence. Her enthusiasm and passion for early childhood development is inspiring to her colleagues and the families with whom she works. Lynn and a group of her past colleagues have published a research article reflecting on their experiences using the primary service provider model. Lynn has presented at county, state, and national conferences on topics ranging from gross motor skills to early literacy to implementation of the primary service provider model. Our early intervention team is often empowered by working with her. Lynn has enriched our own professional knowledge and skills by sharing her many experiences and strategies with us. She's never too busy to join us on joint home visits or to share her experiences with the family coaching model. She's also a careful listener and is eager to learn from others. She's passionate about multidisciplinary collaboration and frequently says, "I am always learning." Lynn is a fierce advocate for her students and their families. She goes over and above to locate necessary resources in the community to support the individual needs of her students, whether it's connecting a family with the county's pediatric nutritionist or recommending a local orthopedic specialist. She's been known to attend doctor's visits with families in order to help parents advocate for their child's needs and support their understanding of their child's medical condition. Erin Marcus, a parent in Royal Oak Schools, writes, Lynn has been supporting my daughter through early intervention services since she was discharged from the NICU in September 2022. Ruby spent her first 3 months in the NICU after being born prematurely at 30 weeks. Bringing Ruby home was a very scary and uncertain time, but Lynn provided an enormous level of expertise, knowledge, compassion, and comfort that really helped us in the transition of caring for her at home. Lynn was also pivotal in ensuring Ruby's developmental progress. There is no hiding Lynn's mastery of children's development, and we often lean on her and the enormous expertise she has in all areas of development and growth. We have benefited and learned so much from Lynn that we often reach to her first, as she has become our trusted advisor. Lynn not only provides support for Ruby, but our entire family. Our early intervention team can think of no one more deserving of this prestigious award, and we are proud to call Lynn our teammate.
You don't have to talk.
All I can say is thank you. This happened on Friday. I'm never without words, and I was speechless Friday, and I'm speechless again today. But thank you so much for recognizing this, and thank you, everyone at the board. Appreciate all of you.
Very good, thank you, Ms. Legg. Does anybody from the board have any comments? Early intervention team, please report to the picture. And then again, on behalf of the Board of Education, thank you so much for your dedication to the district. We do appreciate everything you've done. Which brings us to item 5.2, which is our robotics team presentation. The room's going to clear out shortly, I think. I'd like to call up Ms. Ashburn and Mr. Beatty.
I might say it's getting old being here every month, but I've enjoyed it. Didn't know we had so many talented kids at Royal Oak High School and so many awards that would be given out this year. So it's been an honor to come often to this forum. First, I'd like to do an individual award. We had some really exciting news from the World Championship, the first robotics team. I'm thrilled to announce that Sarah Milligan, where is she? Come on up, come on. A dedicated member of the first FRC robotics team, 1188, has won the prestigious Dean's List Award. This award recognizes outstanding student leaders who have effectively contributed to their school and their team. It's given to those who best exemplify the qualities of leadership, commitment, technical expertise, and the ability to motivate their team. Winning this award at the World Championship level is an extraordinary event, reflecting Sarah's hard work, passion for robotics, and the ability to inspire those around her. Please join us in congratulating Sarah on this well-deserved recognition. Sarah had come to me earlier before she got this award and been advocating to find a home for the robotics team, which we're still working on. So she's very passionate about it. And some of her remarks about this award were all about her team and how it's about teamwork. And it was just so genuine and so nice to hear all the lovely things she had to say about all of her teammates and how they all work together. So something you just love to see. But we also have, do you want to say something?
Yeah, go ahead. Regarding the award, like Miss Ashburn was saying, this award, while it is individual, is mostly a reflection of how the team works and how the team impacts like the individual that won it. I would have certainly not been able to win this award without everyone on the team for a lot of different reasons, for the technical expertise that I gained from all of my mentors, all of my teammates that work together to create new initiatives, and I'll talk about those more in a minute. And yeah, I'm incredibly grateful for this team and everything that it's done for me, so thank you guys.
And I want to thank her parents and her sister for coming also and for supplying you with a lot of information. They are so proud of her and they kept sending me emails and I loved getting them because you could just hear the emails when you read them and thought they were so proud of you. So it was great to get those. But we're going to move on. You can stay up here, but we're going to move on to the high school team. They won the Quality Award for Effective Robot Design at the Belleville event. They won the Gracious Professionalism Award for helping other teams at their Troy event. They have a partnership with the University of Michigan through which they mentor roughly 25 Detroit teams, and they assist any team who needs it at events. Won the Dean's List Award 3 times, won each at local, state, and world championship levels. This recognizes the outstanding student, but notably, you will not win this award without a really strong team, which we have, and a team culture behind you. There are roughly 100,000 students who participate in this program worldwide, and only 10 winners, ours, one of them being Sarah, who won at the championship. So Chris Mounts and Cameron Beatty are here, and they're gonna talk a little bit about the team, and the team's all back here. We have lots of people. So do you wanna come on up, introduce yourself, and talk about the team? And they brought, I called it Mr. Mister. They said its name is locked in, like focus, locked in. So they're gonna bring it up.
All right, thank you so much, Angela, and thank you to the school board for everything you've done for us with improving our field trips, and to Mary Beth Fitzpatrick in particular for all of her support, and of course for Paula as well for all of your support. I send a lot of emails to various administrators, so it means a lot that, here, why don't you bring it around this way so they can see it a little bit better. So yeah, it means a lot just having the support. Yeah, I'm here on behalf of the high school team, and this is the high school team, or at least a large portion of it back here right now. We'll talk about that, but I also really want to talk about the program overall, because we have high school team, middle school teams, and elementary school teams. So this is the high school robot. It weighs about 150 pounds. We get about roughly 8 to 10 weeks to build or to design this, build it, program it, test it. Every year, come the first weekend of January, there's like a new challenge that's released, a new game. It basically plays sports. This year we were shooting these like foam donuts. Grab a donut. We shoot these foam donuts into a goal that's like 8 or 10 feet off the ground. Moving the goal is pretty cumbersome, so we'll get to a demo. We'll just launch some back into the stage space there. Yeah, you'll get to see it. It's pretty fun. But really, the key thing here is that the high school is kind of the like capstone team. what we're really trying to do is build up like a district-wide program so that every student has a chance to participate. So we also have a middle school team. Their robots are a little bit smaller. Unfortunately, the coach for that, Michael Holden, is on a business trip this week, so he's not able to be here. But I think, do you remember how many?
5 teams.
5 teams in the middle school. Do you remember how many students?
30 to 40.
Yeah, like 30 to 40 students in the middle school. We got 30 in the high school. And then starting this year, we had, or this school year, we had a team at Keller Elementary as well. We're hoping to expand that to all of the elementary schools. I know Sarah will talk about that. And so, yeah, really, the goal of the whole program is to just create like a district-wide approach to STEM. It kind of runs like a business. We've got various students, as you can see. We've got a lot of people, and then there are more that aren't here too. And between all of them, they do all kinds of things such as outreach, PR, emailing sponsors. Our budget's like 40 or 50,000 a year, most of which comes from sponsors. So it's a lot to try and raise the funds and make it happen. And the students do the vast majority of the work on that. So it's kind of like whatever you're interested in, there's something for you to do, right? Whether it's hardcore engineering or some kind of administration or something artistic, it all goes into it. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Sarah. She'll talk a little bit more about some of our outreach programs.
All right, so one of our newest programs is our FLL program for elementary schoolers in 4th and 5th grade. We had our very first 4 teams earlier this school year in the fall, and essentially what FLL is, it's kind of a model of both of the middle school and the high school programs where students are given a challenge at the beginning of the season, which is the start of the school year for FLL. And throughout that season, they have to build a robot that solves those challenges using, in the FLL case, Legos. FLL stands for First Lego League. So in addition to building a robot, our students also built these innovation projects. They're also given a separate challenge at the beginning of the season. It's like a problem statement, and they build a project that solves that problem in the real world. So, and at the end of the season, they all go to a competition, and they compete with those robots, and they also present their projects to a panel of judges. Our students really enjoyed this program, and we also enjoyed it on the high school team. We had several students on the high school team mentoring these students throughout the season. And because of that, we're very interested in expanding to our remaining 5 elementary schools. And that's essentially what we're looking forward to in this coming fall. I'll talk more about what things need to go into that later on. So FLL is one of our big upcoming programs that was piloted this year and that we're hoping to make accessible to the rest of the school district. And some of our other notable outreach programs are our RoboCamps, for example. We're running 2 weeks of this over the summer, and it's essentially an entire robotics season compressed into 1 week for students age 8 to 12. And we do have a couple spots open, so if anyone is interested, then we have those available on our website, team1188.org. So that's one of our other major outreach programs that's been expanding from 1 to 2 weeks. And one of our very newest programs is a Girls Who Code program, which we're partnering with the library to do. So the library is giving us space to run this program. They're helping us advertise it. And some female leaders on the team will help inspire younger students, elementary age students, to pursue, to learn how to code and really make a mark in the STEM field. So those are some of our major outreach programs. We do a lot of smaller things too, especially as the team is growing. And with that, I'll turn it over to Will.
All right, so my name is Will, and I'm going to be talking about the major systems of our robot. So to start, on the top, we have the intake. It uses rollers to intake the foam rings so it can move them over to the shooter, which is the yellow wheels, and it shoots them at different targets. And the intake and shooter systems are on a two-joint arm, the first of which being the wrist that it can use to angle the shots, and the second, the elbow, that it uses to change the elevation of the intake and shooter. And that's all on a swerve base, which it uses to move very fast and effectively across the field. And that's the major systems. And we can give you a demonstration in a minute.
Yeah, thank you, Will. So Ethan here and Sarah were our competition robot drivers at our events. And so if you want to get on the sticks, and Andrew, you want to go? So yeah, we'll just do a quick demonstration of the kind of the intake and launching capabilities. Obviously, it's not really set up in here right now to drive it around, so probably won't do too much of that. But just a fun little demo. And you still got the snapper. All right, the fabled live demos, which always go perfectly on the first try. On the actual game field, there are little vision targets on the goal, and the robot has cameras on it that will look at the vision targets and automatically aim. So that's why it's always is a little bit trickier to kind of do the demonstration without the goals up. And on that note, I need to extend another huge thank you to the school board for letting us set up our field elements in here throughout the season and practice using this as our field. That made a huge difference for us. So again, we really appreciate it, and we hope it didn't cause too much trouble. So, yeah, I mean, that's about it. Again, it's pretty fun. All right, yeah, thank you so much, and yeah, we really appreciate your time.
Again, thank you so much. Any board comments? Mrs. Cook?
I'd just like to say that it's wonderful to see, the design and the coding and everything that went into this. But I'm also very impressed to hear about the leadership skills and hearing about our students helping other students from other districts. And it's just exactly what we're hoping that our students are bringing out into the world. And so we are just so very proud of you. Thank you.
And any other comments? I would like to say something. I have one. Dr. Ioannis?
Thank you, Mr. Jaworski. I do want to thank all of our students as part of the robotics team, our coaches and sponsors as well. We know it takes a team effort to pull off something like this, and Sarah's leadership, she's worked really hard to grow some of the elementary programs, so we are excited to look to expand those at some of the other elementaries next year to continue to grow the program. So thank you.
right, this brings us to agenda item 5.3.1, which is our National Gun Violence Awareness Day proclamation. And I'd like to ask Ms. Jasinski.
Thank you. This proclamation declares the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the Royal Oak School District to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence and to declare that we as a country must do more to end this public health crisis. Whereas every day 120 Americans are killed by gun violence and more than 200 are shot and wounded, with an average of nearly 18,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas Americans are 26 times more likely to die by gun homicide than people in other high-income countries. And whereas Michigan has 1,382 gun deaths every year, with the rate of 13.7 deaths per 100,000 people, a crisis that costs the state $16.8 billion every year, of which $380.5 million is paid by taxpayers. Michigan has the 34th highest rate of gun deaths in the United States. And whereas protecting public safety in the communities they serve is the district's highest responsibility, and whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from people who shouldn't have them. And whereas gun violence prevention is more important than ever as we see an increase in firearm homicides and non-fatal shootings across the country, increased calls to domestic violence hotlines, and an increase in city gun violence. Whereas on January 2013, Hadia Pendleton was tragically shot and killed at age 15, and on June 7th, 2024, to recognize the 27th birthday of Hadia Pendleton, born June 2nd, 1997, people across the United States will recognize National Gun Violence Awareness Day and wear orange in tribute to Hadia Pendleton and other victims of gun violence and the loved ones of those victims. And whereas the idea was inspired by a group of Hadia's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange, they chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods, and orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. And whereas anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on June 7th, the first Friday in June 2024, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And whereas by wearing orange on June 7th, 2024, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. Whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all that we can to keep firearms out of the hands of people who should not have access to them and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our families and communities safe. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Royal Oak School Board of Education declares the first Friday in June, June 7th, 2024, to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day. We encourage all schools to support their local communities' efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human life.
Thank you, Mr. Jasinski. Do you have any comments from the board? I just want to thank those in the audience, especially Deb, Diana, and Jeb. Your dedication to this movement has been inspiring to me personally for years, and I'm so glad that we have this great relationship between your organization and our district. Thank you. Do I have a second? Mrs. Cook. With that, any other comments? Since I skipped that part. No? Okay. May I have a roll call vote?
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Haynes?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
The motion passes.
This brings us to agenda item 5.3.2, Mental Health Awareness Month. I'd like to ask Mrs. Alexander.
Whereas mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being, it affects how we think, feel, and act. It also affects how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. And whereas mental health allows us to maintain relationships, take care of ourselves and our families, take care of our physical bodies, and respond and adapt to daily life changes. And whereas 1 in 5 adolescents have had a serious mental health disorder at some point in their life, and whereas 50% of all mental health disorders begin by age 14, and 75% of all mental health disorders begin by age 24, whereas suicide is one of the leading causes of death in the United States, and whereas talking about mental health can reduce stigma and increase awareness of the devastating consequences of unaddressed mental illness, And whereas evidence-based mental and behavioral health training teaches people how to recognize signs and symptoms of mental health and substance use challenges and provides skills to assist people who may be facing a mental health crisis. And whereas mental health training for teens is proven to reduce stigma and teach teens how to identify, understand, and respond to signs of mental health and substance use challenges among their friends and peers. And whereas investing in mental health and safety is critical to building strong workplaces, a thriving workforce, and strong communities. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education does hereby proclaim May 2024 as Mental Health Awareness Month.
Thank you. Do I have a second? So many seconds. Mrs. Anderson. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Hearing none, I'd like to call for a roll call.
Mrs. Haynes?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
And the resolution passes.
On to agenda item 5.3.3, which is the National Foster Care Month proclamation. I'd like to ask Mrs. Cook to present.
Whereas, since 1988, each U.S. president has issued a proclamation to recognize that May will be known as National Foster Care Awareness Month in order to raise awareness of the needs of youth in foster care and to celebrate the many supporters who are making a powerful and positive difference in their lives. And whereas families are the primary source of love, identity, self-esteem, and support for children, and they are the foundation of our communities. And whereas in the state of Michigan, more than 10,000 children are in foster care, and whereas all children need a meaningful connection to a caring adult who becomes a supportive and lasting presence in their lives, and whereas foster parents and relatives who provide stability for children and support for their parents are unsung heroes, and whereas foster, kinship, and adoptive families who open their hearts and homes and support children whose families are in crisis play a vital role in helping children and families heal and reconnect, launching young people into successful adulthood. And whereas there are many people in public and private organizations, the courts, and in the community who work to increase public awareness of the needs of children in and leaving foster care. And whereas we join with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services to thank individuals and families and public and private organizations that provide support and security to the children in their care, and welcome this opportunity to share the message that we are always in need of caring foster parents. Now, therefore, the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education does hereby proclaim May 2024 as National Foster Care Month.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second? Ms. Jasinski, thank you. Any discussion on the proclamation? Excellent. May we have a roll call?
I will vote yes. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Haynes?
Yes.
The resolution passes.
Okay, agenda item 5.3.4 is the Jewish American Heritage Month proclamation. I'd like to ask Mrs. Haynes to present.
Sure. Whereas May is Jewish American Heritage Month, a month that provides an opportunity for all people to appreciate the achievements and contributions of Jewish Americans throughout history. And whereas in 1980, President Jimmy Carter adopted a proclamation annually recognizing Jewish American Heritage Week, and in April 2006, President George W. Bush adopted a proclamation that May would be recognized as Jewish American Heritage Month. And whereas Jewish Americans have made significant contributions to society and culture, including science, medicine, sports, entertainment, business rights, government, military service, and philanthropy. And whereas Jewish Americans often face unspeakable discrimination and adversity, yet for hundreds of years they have fought heroically in battle, pursued peace, and always persevered. And whereas Royal Oak Schools reaffirms our commitment to combating anti-Semitism and discrimination against Jewish Americans. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education recognizes May 2024 as Jewish American Heritage Month.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Mrs. Alexander. Any discussion on the proclamation? Seeing none, I'd like to call for a roll call.
Trustee Alexander.
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski.
Yes.
Trustee Cook.
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski.
Yes.
Trustee Haynes.
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and this resolution passes as well.
Agenda item 5.3.5 is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month proclamation. I'd like to ask Mrs. Anderson to present.
Whereas the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education take pride in recognizing May 2024 as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander AANHPI Heritage Month, honoring and celebrating the many significant contributions of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Island people who have enriched the history of our nation. And whereas Asian Americans are the fastest growing population in the nation in Michigan, with approximately 377,181 Asian Americans in Michigan, making up 3.7% of the state's population. And whereas we celebrate all of those who are included within the AANHPI community, which is made up of culturally and linguistically diverse peoples, representing populations from many countries and islands. And whereas the theme for this year's observance is Advancing Leaders Through Innovation, which pays homage to the visionaries and trailblazers who have shaped our AANHPI history and continue to influence our collective future. And now, therefore, be it resolved, the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education does hereby proclaim May 2024 as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Thank you. And do we have a second? Mrs. Haynes. Any discussion on the proclamation? Seeing none, I'd like to call for a roll call.
Trustee Jaworski.
Yes.
Trustee Cook.
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski.
Yes.
Trustee Haynes.
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander.
Yes.
And this resolution passes as well.
Thank you. Before we move on to agenda item 6.1, the board's going to take a quick picture with the Moms Demand Action Group that's with us tonight. So, Ms. Phillips, you're on deck.
You caught us when we were laughing.
No. Tim, can I say one thing before we move on?
Absolutely.
For those of you who did join us and, watch these recordings, and we know that that was a lot of proclamations to stack into a single meeting. And I would have followed up mine with something, but I needed a minute because it's personal. But these are yes, they are words. We know that our actions need to follow up these types of things, but the proclamations are a way for us to, publicly support things that we believe in, share our values with the community. And so thank you for bearing with those the long stretch of them. But we also hope that, as people, we bring attention to these things and we can kind of, make this official in our statements, that it's a way for us to share those things with our community. And I'm proud to serve on a board that believes in such diversity. Thanks.
Of course, thank you. Okay, now on to 6.1 for real. Ms. Phillips?
Thank you, and that segues us into diversity, equity, and inclusion. Good evening, everyone. So we have a few quick May updates. Our Keller International Festival wrap-up, the MDE DEI tour, school visits have continued, and implicit bias PD. So when we last were together here, I reminded you all that the next day will be our Keller International Food and Fun Festival, which turned out amazing. Even though we had some rain and conflicting events going on in the district, time-wise, we had an amazing turnout. And the students first stopped at the opening desk that gave them a passport and then different things to color in their pictures. And at each stop that they stopped at, they were able to receive a stamp on their passport for all of their visits. They heard African drumming and storytelling, lots of food, and arts and scraps was there. There were tons of boards set up by all of the families representing different countries, and it's so nice to see all the cultural dress. And as we include our, as we bump up our inclusive events, they had an IFFF sensory room where you could go just for a calming space and just to get away from a lot of the things that were going on, because there were lots of events going on in different places in the rooms. And I was able to host the DEI meet and greet booth. The parents and families stopped there for their first stamp right at the door, and they were able to receive some treats and use our around the world crayons to color their pictures in, and to also scan a QR code for a one question thought exchange, just asking what they would like to see for us to grow in for DEI efforts in Royal Oak School. So it was an amazing turnout, and I cannot wait to join them again for next year. Then we move over to our MDE DEI tour, which wrapped up the last of the April events. We were joined by Dr. Renee Garcia, who's the director of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Michigan Department of Education, and her partner Jennifer Saylor, who's the assistant director of the Office of Educational Supports. We started off at Upton with a welcoming presentation, and they got to hear an overview of the district and the different departments in the district and how we help to create access throughout the district. So they heard presentations from us, but then we got to visit some classrooms, and we strategically placed it where they would definitely get to meet with the teachers who submitted some of the MDE Black History Month calendar projects back in January and February. So they were able to put faces with the names of all the submissions. And we stopped at the high school, and we were able to eat with the high schoolers and hear all about Diversity Club and just different clubs and different things that the students do as student advocates. So that was an amazing part of our trip. And we also stopped at the middle school and were able to partake in the neurodiversity presentation. So our guest said that we rolled out the royal carpet for them, the Royal Oak carpet, and they were so excited because they received conference badges and tour packets and everything, and they said, you all really showed us a great time this time. We would like to come back again next time and be put to work. So we are hoping to further that partnership there, and our lovely communication specialist, Amy Murphy, got tons of pictures for us, so they really loved and felt like celebrities during their tour there. So school visits have continued. For the last 2 weeks, I've presented to over 250 students, mainly during presentations for DEI and talking about empathy and the power of our words. I've also done some Saga and Diversity Club visits, which you'll see a couple of pictures next from the Diversity Club. But some students' feedback from Saga, they are really excited for the staff to further their support and to learn more about LGBTQ+ issues. So they're excited for the support all throughout the year, but they're really excited for next month. And the school visits continued at our carnival last week, where I was able to stop by the Diversity Club. They had a diversity spin wheel and trivia, and I got to hear some of the groups perform, and speaking of our robotics team, I was able to stop by their table as well. And Will, who just presented to us, was able to tell me all about robotics and Royal Oak schools in general. So that was great visits. And then yesterday, all of our staff was trained in implicit bias for our Session 3 PD for DEI and for our late start. So some of the topics we covered were just an overview of implicit bias. It's tying with education. We took the Harvard IAT test and then talked about some community building as well. Some of the literary resources were that we used for this were the Culturally Responsive Teaching the Brain book, Equity by Design, and Street Data. During our the end of our presentation, we were able to share our stories of where we are from, and all of our staff got to hear our story from our world language teacher, Fiona, and she talked about the knowledge of my ancestors. There's a special poem that she has that talks all about her story there. And they ended with a reminder from one of our high school students who said, be the teacher that pushes someone to do something that they did not think they could do. Encourage students who have never taken any AP, DP, or honors courses to try it in future years. So we talked about how implicit bias plays in with education, but we went in deeper and said at every level we can think about how implicit biases may cause the formation of unnecessary limits placed on our students. So from the door, when you first meet them, make sure that you are helping them to reach higher levels each time and each day. We received a lot of great feedback. The very last slide for our presentation, each staff member was able to answer, again, just a one-question survey for a thought exchange, and they popped in a lot of ideas of what they would like for further PD training. And as you can see, a lot are saying support, DEI, classroom, and inclusive. So we want to make sure that we use their input to further our PD for next year. And thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any discussion on Ms. Phillips' presentation? Ms. Haynes?
I just want to say, you've been with us how long now?
So since end of November.
Okay. And what you have brought to us every month has been beyond stellar. I love hearing about how you're interacting with the students. I love the pictures. I love the energy you bring. And so I just want to say kudos to you for all this amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Matthew?
I'd also like to extend that thanks to you, Ms. Phillips. Ever since you got here, you know, we've known each other and you've always been around at events and we say hi, but it really was important to me that you were at the International Food and Fun Fest. That's an event that since my childhood and when I was going through Keller has always meant a lot to me. And the fact that you were there and reaching out to communities and working with the parents and the families meant a lot because it showed that you value our district, you value what we already have put in place, and you also are looking always to expand those programs. So I really appreciate your role. I really appreciate the work you've done, and I hope you continue to stay with our district for many years. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
On to agenda item 6.2, which is our student representative to the board report.
Well, I have a little bit to talk about, but I guess I'll open it with, as this is my last official board meeting, I'd just like to extend my thanks to the school board, to the admin of Royal Oak High School, including Ms. Ashburn, to Ms. Murphy for always reaching out, to everybody here at the board office, including Mr. Walensky, Ms. Sutterfield, Mr. Dr. Ioannis, and Ms. Abella. Thank you guys for including me, always talking to me. If I have a question, I know I can ask you about your areas of expertise. I really appreciated being included on a bunch of the interviews and panels, and with any information I needed, I know I could reach out to the people and get that. And I'd like to extend this sort of message to anybody for future years who's trying out for this position. This is a really unique opportunity to get an experience most kids don't have. You get to see sort of the view from the board office, and you can really get deeper insight into how the education is run from the behind the scenes. I think a lot of the times when we think of education, it's mostly about students and teachers, but the behind the scenes is extremely important. A lot of the bond work that gets done, the facility upgrades, and getting to experience the people and the work that gets put on at that level has been really eye-opening for me. I think about school issues in a way that I never had before, so I'd just like to thank you guys for this opportunity. And then on to some of the work that has been done. This month, actually, just last week, we had the round of student interviews for the future board positions. I think we had 8 students in total interviewing, so it's really good to see increased interest for this program. I think, like I said, it's a very valuable one. So to anybody who interviewed, thank you for putting yourself out there. And I'm glad to see that we have so many students who are interested in both this position and doing something for their grade and for their school community as a whole. And then additionally, I worked with Andrew Bazuki, Anthony Lucrecio, and Jarrett Grissomer. We were talking and having some ongoing discussions about the upgrades to the auditorium sound technology and other facilities that will be presented to you in a moment. I'm assuming you've already seen them, but it's once again good to see all the different aspects that go into our education and how even at the board and district office level, there's always people willing to have conversations with the students and really address student needs. So I appreciate the ongoing support of the district for performing arts and for the facilities in general. So thank you.
All right, thank you. If any discussion on Matthew's report, Mrs. Alexander.
I just want to echo back to you that, we are so grateful to have you and your participation, and you give me hope for the future. So thank you.
Mrs. Anderson, we can go down the line.
I want to echo Ms. Alexander, echoing to you, thank you so much. And to all the students who participated this year, it's been really great. The feedback and the information that you've been able to give to us has been very helpful and eye-opening to us as well, so thank you.
Mrs. Haynes.
I still can't believe you're a high school senior. To me, you're wise beyond your years, young man, and look forward to seeing what you're going to do once you graduate. But thank you for all the information. I think you've given us more than we've ever gotten, and just having the lunches with you and the students is just a blast. So thank you, and do me a favor and thank Alexander for us too.
Oh, why not? We'll all tell you how great you are. We are going to do an official handover next month, so there is going to be a little bit more pomp and circumstance, and we'll thank both Matthew and Alex and welcome in our new board members. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's been invaluable insight, and I hope what a legacy that you're able to leave, right, to really build up this program. It's only in its second year. You've already put things into place for us to keep going. The lunches are new, right, our interaction, and I just think it's something to be really proud of. I'm sure that you're going to be behind plenty of board tables in your life.
Mrs.
And
Cook.
we'll just make it unanimous. I really have appreciated working with you and with the other student representatives. It was really wonderful to go to the high school and to have lunch with so many students and hear their feedback, and just really appreciate all of the input.
And I'll make it really unanimous. So probably 4 years ago, when I had this crazy idea that we should bring student board members onto the board, I was told there wasn't any interest, the kids don't want to be here, and we've shown that kids do want to be here. And Matthew, you're exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for someone who's going to come and give us your true, honest opinion, tell us what's going on, why the decisions we're making are affecting the way things are going in the schools. And I appreciate everything you've done, and Alexander here at our board meetings, and the others that are with us at our finance meetings. So again, thank you.
I have to say something. I've been holding back, but no more holding back. Thank you, Matthew, for your service to this board, and Alex as well, and our two other students at the Finance and Facilities meeting. But it's a wonderful testament to all that you have done in your time here in Royal Oak. And it's exciting to see this opportunity for our students, and it's wonderful to know that our students at the elementary level are starting very early on to be encouraged to have a voice in what they do in their elementary classrooms, and it's exciting to see that extends out to this kind of product with our student board members who have continued to voice their opinions, and the feedback that we get from you is very important to have, as students are an important stakeholder in this process. So thank you. I'm very impressed, and look forward to hearing some of your success stories in the future.
Also, we have one of our candidates from last week in the audience with us tonight, too. You'll be hearing from us shortly. So bring us to agenda item number 7, which is communications. To ask Ms. Anderson to present our communications.
We've received communications in the past month from Erica Lee, Alfie Ormsby, Michael Carmen, Catherine Chambers, Carol Finkelstein, Mark Katz, Lindsay Cole, and Brandon Colo.
Thank you. We're into agenda item number 8, which is our consent agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the consent agenda this evening? Hearing none, we'll pass the consent agenda as presented. And to agenda item 9.1, the first and only reading of technical changes to policies and administrative guidelines. Ask Dr. Ioannis to speak on this.
Thank you, Mr. Jaworski. So as you mentioned, or as a reminder, these policy recommendations were discussed at a recent policy board committee, and I want to draw your attention to item 9.1. As Mr. Jaworski said, it's our first and only reading of some technical changes to the policies and or some administrative guideline changes. So I wanted to bring that to your attention tonight.
Do I have a recommendation? Okay, Ms. Jasinski.
Resolved that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education approves the reading of the policies and administrative guidelines with technical changes as presented in the board packet.
Do we have a second? Mrs. Haynes. Any discussion on the item? Go ahead, Ms. Jasinski.
Yeah, as we stated, the difference between this and the next resolution is that when we say technical changes, it's literally like fixing typos and putting in capital letters and things like that. So it's not changing any of our policies.
Thank you. With no further discussion, I'd call for a roll call.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Haynes?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Agenda item 9.2 is the first reading of revised, replaced, and/or recommended policies and guidelines. I ask Dr. Ioannis to speak to this as well.
Okay, thank you. So as Ms. Jasinski just mentioned, item 9.2 is a little bit different. This will be the first reading of some potentially revised or replaced recommendations to the board policy. There will be a second reading in June to review these same policies. So I bring that to your attention, please.
All right, thank you. Do I have a recommendation? Ms. Cook.
Resolved that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education approves the first reading of the policies and administrative guidelines being revised, replaced, and/or recommended as presented in the board packet.
And do we have a second? Mrs. Haynes. Any discussion on the item? Yes.
Just really quickly, the policy committee also reviewed these. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other discussion? Excellent. With that, I'd like to call for a vote.
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Haynes?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
And this motion passes.
Okay, agenda item 9.3 is a curriculum and instruction update. Again, Dr. Ioannis.
Thank you so much. So part of our monthly Insight into Learning video series, really the purpose is to help everyone get a better understanding of some of the wonderful things that are taking place in our classrooms. We have a good big team that works on it. Amy Murphy, Jared Grishmer, our supervisor for elementary education, and Njovu, who happens to be here, and Ben Rader, our supervisor of secondary education. We work together as a team to bring some insight into learning. So this month's Insight into Learning video is going to focus on our IB diploma program. We're going to learn a little bit about some components of it. We're going to hear some feedback from students and teachers. So I'll go ahead and get us started there.
Diploma program is a broad 2-year program, set of classes that are linked to one another. The IB diploma program is about 50 years old and it's internationally known. And the reason for the 2 years is part of the philosophy is that students will go beyond the who, what, and where, but into the why and how. And so students have 2 years to take classes in 6 different areas. So language and literature, world language, history, sciences, math, and then the arts.
I think what appeals to me about the IB philosophy is getting to go deeper into just a few topics and engage students in the kind of studies that they might do in college, as well as taking time to independently research things on their own, rather than simply covering lots of content extremely quickly.
I think some of the advantages are that my students seem to have developed more confidence and more persistence. Their communication within the topic is a lot stronger than I typically see. They develop stronger relationships with each other, and I've noticed that.
Sorry about that. I just noticed that the video wasn't catching up with the display up there. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Yeah. It is, yeah, a little bit of.
like clear answer, and there's not a lot of like rote memorization. It's more like figuring things out for yourself and what you believe is the best conclusion. And I believe that those skills, along with like the hard skills I learned, like learning how to write, learning how to research, will benefit, and people skills will benefit me greatly in college and in my future career.
I think one thing that really sets IB program classes apart is this emphasis on balance, right? You are not just learning material to take a test at the end of your senior year. That is one component of it. There are so many other really important ways for students to show their learning, and that takes place throughout 2 years versus students just kind of cramming for a test maybe at the end of their senior year.
I chose to pursue the IB diploma because I really wanted to like connect with other people. The classes are like really small, so I got the chance to like connect with other peers and other people who are like really passionate about learning. I also took it because I wanted to have like more of a challenging coursework. In my other classes before, I took a couple AP classes, but I really liked GP because I could take like a bunch of like higher level coursework and it all combined and work together.
The thing that appeals to me most about the IB philosophy is that it looks at students very holistically, and instead of my subject matter, which is math, being very compartmentalized, we end up asking questions that delve into other topics and other subject areas.
In the program, everyone tries, all the teachers try to like relate the classes to each other. So the curriculums, they're obviously the different subjects, but at Theory of Knowledge, we're learning about history, and like we talk about stuff they're talking about. In my actual history class, we also mentioned stuff in history. We mentioned like biology and and to like connect all the subjects together.
I think that my teaching practice has been impacted from teaching IB by encouraging students to do a lot of thinking on their own and being okay with making mistakes and taking the time to figure things out for themselves as they further develop as scholars in high school.
And then in a program as a whole, you know, students are getting experience with a lot of different subject areas, a lot of different testing formats. They're getting experience with literally thinking about how they think in their TOK class. And they're getting experience as well with looking into global citizenship, looking into creativity and arts and service, and taking action in their local communities with their CAS expectations. So I think it's really awesome to see a program like the International Baccalaureate program that is not just centered on students as students, but students as local citizens and students as global citizens.
So as you can see, it's kind of nice to see our diploma program, kind of a culmination of opportunities around the IB commitment and work that we have here, starting with our Keller students in the PYP program, and then all of our offerings for our MYP middle years program for students in grades 6 through 10. So hopefully that insight into learning gave you a little bit of a glimpse of some of the opportunities that our students have here in Royal Oak, and excited to see many of them take such great advantage and advantage of the opportunities there. I have another important component or important thing that takes place in May is Teacher and Staff Appreciation Month. So that there is a week in the month of May where we really take some time to acknowledge and appreciate and show appreciation for all of our teachers and staff members. Thankful for all of the hard work that they do on a daily basis to support all of our students and families. I've seen it firsthand, teachers and staff working hard to support students that we see when they're coming to the board meeting to present to us. They're being supported by wonderful teachers and staff members. So thank you for everyone out there that supports that work. Our PTAs do a wonderful job recognizing our staff members during the month of May. So hopefully everyone felt the love this month, and we can continue that as we head to the most difficult and busy time of the year for mostly everybody in a school setting. The other is kind of goes hand in hand. Mental Health Awareness Month is May, so very important to focus on social emotional supports for all of our students. We know that it's a high need, and I wanted to just highlight some ways that we are trying to increase the mental health supports in multiple ways. We've talked about it before, but our trauma-informed work continues. We currently have our 4th cohort group of staff members were trained in December. Cohort 5 will be in June, and then we have a 6th cohort group being ready to be trained in August. Each cohort group has about 30 to 35 staff members. And starting with cohort 4, we really have done the internal training. We had a group of staff members that were trained to be trainers. So starting from cohort 4 and continuing forward is really our own teachers and staff members that are doing that training. So we're hoping that that trauma-informed awareness can help our staff members better support our students. Something else that's been a focus, we've talked about it before, behavior threat assessment training. We have a focus and a goal of having counselors, social workers, psychologists, and teachers and building administrators being trained in how to understand, to facilitate the behavior threat assessment component. So as these issues develop in our buildings, we're really hoping, and with this training, to increase the strength of how we identify students that are struggling with need, and then find ways to provide support for them. Also connected to mental health awareness is our prepared training, which is really focused on crisis response. A lot of the work that we have developed, and kind of Mr. Walensky has worked through that with our emergency plans for the buildings and for the district. The prepared training is specific in helping, again, psychologists, counselors, social workers, building administrators better understand how to respond to crisis times. A couple more that I'll talk about: suicide response guidance. High school teachers and staff members have worked hard to develop and think about ways to support and identify students in need. So we're kind of working on finding ways to facilitate that process a little bit more streamlined. And second step at the elementary level, social emotional component there as far as teaching Character Strong. We heard a little bit about that previously. Another opportunity for students to engage in social emotional learning. So we're excited about these opportunities that we've really kind of been working on throughout the year, and have increased these opportunities. So I thought it would be a good time to talk about that, given that it's Mental Health Awareness Month in May. So I will take us, as discussed in our finance and facilities meetings, there were quite a few items that we talked about. So I'll kind of start with our first one to bring your attention to item 9.3.1, our CTE lab refresh. That's career and technical education. This is grant funded, but it was still something that we discussed about at finance and facilities. So I wanted to just bring that first. Recommendation to the board of the refresh of the labs that are really needed in one of the career tech and education program classes.
It brings us to agenda item 9.3.1, which is the CTE lab refresh. Do I have a recommendation? Mrs. Alexander, do we have a second? Ms. Cook, any discussion on the agenda item? Yeah, we should read that too. Good call. Mrs. Alexander, would you like to read your recommendation?
Resolve that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education authorize the superintendent to finalize the purchase of up to 31 computers, mounts, and monitors for the CTE classroom. All devices to be purchased from People Driven Technology utilizing REMC and MHEC device purchasing program competitive bid at a total expenditure not to exceed $40,000.
Excellent. Do we still have the same second? And now that we've read it, is there any discussion on the agenda item? Mrs. Anderson.
The only thing I want to say about this in the next several resolutions is that when we say that we discussed this in detail at Facilities and Finance last week, we really discussed these in detail at Facilities and Finance last week.
It was maybe one of our longest presentations ever in that committee.
Seems to be a theme with me and long and lengthy, so, and that was only number one, so, okay. So
no other discussion, we call for a vote.
Trustee Haynes.
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander.
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski.
Yes.
Trustee Cook.
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski.
Yes.
The resolution passes.
Okay, thank you. So I want to bring your attention to item 9.3.2, another CTE order. This is for a custom printer for one of the programs. The printer will be able to print and produce some items that will have decals and kind of coding on that for items that our students can kind of work to create. So they're excited to have this opportunity as well, but that would be 9.3.2 on the agenda.
Is that a recommendation, Mrs. Haynes?
I would love to give you a recommendation, Mr. Jaworski. Resolve that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education authorize the superintendent to finalize the purchase of one UV flatbed printer. The printer is to be purchased from ADEX Educational Systems at a total expenditure not to exceed $44,000.
Do we have a second? Mrs. Anderson, any discussion on this agenda item? Seeing none, I'd like to call for a vote.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Haynes?
Yes.
And this motion passes.
All right, thank you. So item 9.3.3, also discussed at our most recent Finance and Facilities meeting, a computer lab refresh for the middle school and the high school, kind of long awaited. I believe when we discussed it at Finance and Facilities, it may have been 2013 since the last time some of these devices were updated. So definitely time for that.
Mrs. Cook.
Resolved that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education authorize the superintendent to finalize the purchase of up to 96 laboratory computers, mounts, and 150 monitors for student media arts learning. All devices are to be purchased from People-Driven Technology, utilizing the REMC spot competitive state bid at a total expenditure not to exceed $98,000.
And do we have a second? Mrs. Haynes, any discussion on this agenda item? Seeing none, I'd like to call for a vote.
Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Haynes?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. This motion passes.
All right, so item 9.3.4 would be secretary support staff and computer update as part of some of the security plans that Mr. Walensky led and some of the components of what the responsibilities and components for secretarial staff that Ms. Abella has identified as far as finances. We realized that our support staff at the office level needed a refresh on the laptops so that they can be portable in their work that they do, kind of tied into a docking station. And most of them, almost all of them, I believe, needed a refresh. So this is going to be a big improvement for all of our offices at all the buildings.
Do we have a recommendation? Mrs. Cook.
Resolved that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education authorize the superintendent to finalize the purchase of up to 33 laptop computers and docking stations. All devices to be purchased from People-Driven Technology utilizing the REMC MHEC competitive state bid at a total expenditure not to exceed $39,000.
Do we have a second? Mrs. Alexander. Any discussion on the agenda item? Seeing none, I'd like to call for a vote.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Haynes?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. And Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
This motion passes.
All right, thank you. So item 9.3.5 is a Chromebook replacement as part of our district technology plan. We have identified grades 6 and 9 as the nice and perfect time to refresh some of the Chromebooks for our students. So item 9.3.5 speaks to that Chromebook replacement need for those grade levels.
Do we have a recommendation? Mrs. Jasinski.
Resolved that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education authorize the superintendent to finalize the purchase of up to 770 student Chromebooks, installation, and associated licenses. All devices are to be purchased from People-Driven Technology, utilizing the REMC/MHEC competitive state bid at a total expenditure not to exceed $210,000.
Do we have a second? Mrs. Haynes. So any discussion on this agenda item? Mrs. Anderson.
Dr. Ioannis, can you tell us a little bit about how you chose these grades as the perfect time for this?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Anderson. That's a great question. So in looking at our district technology plan and kind of trying to identify the appropriate time for a student to get a new device, we landed on 6th and 9th grade, partly because as you enter a new school and a new transition, we thought it'd be important for students to have a fresh device in their hands as they began either their middle year experience at the middle school or their time at the high school. We also looked at the life of the Chromebooks as far as how long it would last. They have a 5-year shelf life. So we thought from when our students first received the devices that we put into everyone's hands a few years ago, the appropriate time to be refreshing them would be as students enter 6th and then 9th grade. We do have a plan for when those devices are turned in for students that are entering 6th and 9th grade. We have a plan to use those devices and kind of incorporate them back into different components of our tech plan. So, but we wanted to focus on starting students off in middle school and high school with a fresh device, and the timing we thought was good with that grade level breakdown between the two. Thank you.
Also, Dr. Johannes, or maybe Ms. Abella, can you explain the difference between these Chromebooks that we're purchasing and those that were given to us during COVID and the extended uses that we can?
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Jaworski. And I can take this one, Ms. Abella. She's coached me up on this, so I think I'm ready for it. We've had many conversations the last few years about these. So the devices that were grant funded and were provided a few years ago as far as COVID relief was really the plan and idea was to put a device in every student's hand because we were doing the home learning and remote learning. And the devices that we received was wonderful to get those devices, but it was limited to only providing those for students that were coming into our district. So once they came into our district or once they were here, those devices were really only able to be used for that purpose. So they were kind of locked and limited in how we use them. We created a district technology plan to hopefully increase the device usage. And I believe, I will have this in the board report, but I do believe we, at the high school, secondary level, high school, the checkout rate for the ECF devices is up to 87%. We had talked about it in finance and facilities and weren't sure on the exact percentage, but part of the district technology plan really, with teacher support and help, really helped high school students get encouraged to check out the devices. So 87% usage rate on those devices that were only specifically be able to be used for that. So we're looking good. And now these Chromebook devices, we have more flexibility in how we can use them since they're not being purchased with that grant-funded money. But we feel like since we have a higher usage checkout rate for the old ECF devices and the combination of these two grade levels between the two, it's really going to end up supporting our district technology plan in a way that we're excited about.
Thank you. Do you have any other discussion on the agenda item? Seeing none, I'd like to call for a vote.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Haynes?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right, so item 9.3.6 would be an upgrade to our district phone system. I think this is another one, as discussed in finance and facilities. I believe this is maybe over 10 years, Ms. Abella, to be from the last time this was a refresh. So there was a time that we could have looked at this last year, but I believe with Jeff Sharp's guidance and the timing of it, he thought it'd be appropriate to wait until we cycle to this time of the year. So another definitely needed upgrade to our phone system.
Do we have a recommendation? Mrs. Haynes?
Resolved that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education authorize the superintendent to finalize the purchase of a complete replacement of the district-wide phone system. The total phone system licensing handsets are to be purchased from BSB Communications, utilizing the Mitel Sourcewell contract competitive state bid at a total expenditure not to exceed $220,000 with a contingency of $30,000.
And do we have a second? Mrs. Anderson. Is there any discussion on the agenda item? Seeing none, I'd like to call for a vote.
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Haynes?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. I promise we're almost done. Item 9.3.7 would be the high school and middle school auditorium AV equipment improvement updates. Again, I think this is another long awaited and long needed replacement for both of those spaces. We've talked about it at finance and facilities. We've heard some student feedback, staff feedback regarding how those areas can be improved. So we're excited about this upgrade that looks like it's long overdue.
And do I have a recommendation? Mrs. Cook?
Resolved that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education authorize the superintendent to finalize the purchase and installation of professional quality audio and video systems in Royal Oak Middle School and Royal Oak High School. The system installation, licensing, and training are to be purchased from Advanced Light and Sound utilizing the Oakland Schools Ferndale competitive bid at a total expenditure not to exceed $51,000 with a contingency of $5,000.
And do we have a second? Mrs. Alexander. Any discussion on the agenda item?
I'm wondering if our student representative has anything to say.
Well, yeah, echoing my previous comments, I'd just like to say how appreciative I am that this work's going through. I think, as was said, it's long overdue, but the district at all levels has been very cooperative with the students in hearing student perspective, hearing perspective from staff members who use that space. And the conclusion that we've sort of reached is that, at least for the Royal Oak High School auditorium, that's a space used by a number of different groups for different purposes, and simplification is needed in order to make sure that anybody coming into that space can do what they need to do, get things running very easily and effectively. So some of the things I'm most excited about in this package are new panels and like touch screens, so that somebody who doesn't really have any idea how to work some of the systems that we have can easily get in and use the equipment that they need to use. And I think that's just a measure that will help simplify the process and also remove some of the risk associated with multiple groups in the same space using technology that not everybody is up to date with how to use. So I think this is a great improvement to the way things are going to be run in our district and in our spaces, and I think, I'm very pleased to see this go through. So thank you.
Anybody else? So that's a call for a vote.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Haynes?
Yes.
This motion passes.
All right, last but not least, item 9.3.8. We're actually very excited about this. This is our elementary ELA pilot program. We've talked about it at Finance and Facilities and a curriculum advisory meeting, the process that our ELA leadership team has taken to work with our teachers and staff members at the elementary level to research and review some resources that we felt would be appropriate to bring to the board as and that's what we're doing here tonight. We have 2 curricular resources that we have, through a long process, identified with teacher feedback that these are the 2 pilot programs that we would like to pilot the 24-25 school year at all 6 elementary schools in a various mix-up as far as grade levels. But we're excited about it, and we're excited to move forward with this opportunity next school year.
Do we have a recommendation? Mrs. Cook.
Resolved that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education authorize the superintendent to finalize the purchase of ELA pilot materials and resources from 2 different companies, Imagine Learning Education and American Reading Company ArcCore, for 28 teachers to pilot during the 24-25 school year at a total expenditure not to exceed $180,000.
And do you have a second? Mrs. Anderson. Any discussion on the agenda item? Dr. West, can you tell us, or those who weren't at the Finance and Facilities meeting last week, when the last time this process was undertaken with the ELA system?
Yeah, so I started at Adams Elementary as an elementary principal in 2014. So I would say during the last 10 years, we haven't gone through this in-depth of a review cycle for ELA. We've had some resources that we've used through Oakland Schools, and we've had some Haggerty programming, some Words Their Way, which really focuses on spelling and word structure and word sounds. We used a lot of separate resources to kind of put together our ELA program. So I would say it's been at least over 10 years before an in-depth review of our needs, and then bringing it to the board. So it's another long overdue component that I believe our teachers are really excited to have resources that have all these consolidated resources together in one component.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Mrs. Anderson.
Dr. Ioannis, can you tell us a little bit about the process, about how you chose these companies and how the teachers are selected or volunteered?
Yeah, definitely. So Ann Njovu, who happens to be here, she's our elementary supervisor of elementary education, and she's done a phenomenal job with our teacher leaders. Of course, she started with collecting an open call out there to any teachers that wanted to be a part of this ELA process. We had, I forgot the exact number, was it 18? We had quite a few. 26. There's been so many numbers since I got through this first report, but we have a lot of ancillary staff and teachers that kind of volunteered to be a part of this. And in the research phase, which was really partly last year, they began to take a look at some district data to begin to identify some research-based instructional practices that team felt and thought would be appropriate to use. Of course, they reviewed some state and national standards as well. And again, they did a needs assessment review. And then this year, we're in the resource phase, which really kind of overlaps. Through Ms. Njovu's leadership, we brought several, I think 3 companies in to present to the ELA leadership team. As part of that presentation, we were able to listen to what they were offering and kind of get a better idea of how they felt their programs and resources would support our students. And there was a way that our teachers could communicate their assessment of those presentations. And we ended up landing on these 2 programs that are brought, or 2 curricular resources that are brought to your attention here. So it was a long process led by Ann and wonderful teachers in our district that really were passionate about putting more appropriate and more connected ELA resources for our teachers to use with our students. So, and the process will continue once we're able to move forward with ordering these resources and beginning the pilot process next year. We have plans, our ELA leadership team has plans to provide teachers with opportunities to collaborate together, because there will be teachers across all 6 buildings that will be using these pilot resources. So Ann will work hard to collect their information and their feedback, again, to make another decision as far as which one of those we'll land on for the following year. Thank you.
Do we have any other discussion? Seeing none, I'd like to call for a vote.
Trustee Alexander.
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski.
Yes.
Trustee Cook.
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski.
Yes.
Trustee Haynes.
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Motion passes.
Move on to agenda item 9.4, which is finance, facilities, and bond. And I'll turn the presentation over to Mrs. Isabella.
Thank you. Good evening. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that all of those agenda items that Dr. Ioannis went over was an hour-long presentation last week at Finance and Facilities. Many of those items are not funded by the general fund. As a matter of fact, all the instructional technology is due to our building site and sinking fund. When that was approved in November of 22, it also gave us access to include the instructional technology. So I want to thank the community for that. Sinking fund, which gives us the ability to have such a strong technology program. Some of the other items were some other grants that we had, like the security grant that we got through the state of Michigan, and I think only the ELA materials were general funded. So we try to protect that general fund, which is what most of our salaries come from. So I also have 2 items on tonight's agenda that we discussed at Finance and Facilities in a much shorter format. And the first one is a resolution, 9.4.1, is approving the International Academy Okuma campus budget. We are one of 10 districts that participate in the IA. We need to approve or disapprove each year their budget for our continued participation. So 9.4.1.
Do I have a recommendation? Mrs. Anderson.
Resolved that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education approves the International Academy Okuma Campus 2024-25 budget as presented in the board packet.
Do you have a second? Mrs. Haynes. Is there any discussion on the agenda item? Well, seeing none, I'd like to call for a vote.
Trustee Jaworski.
Yes.
Trustee Cook.
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski.
Yes.
Trustee Haynes.
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander.
Yes.
Motion passes.
9.4.2 on tonight's agenda is the Oakland Schools the ISD budget. Each year, each of the 28 school districts within Oakland Schools needs to approve or disapprove the Oakland Schools budget. I did attend a meeting where Michelle Saunders, the Director of Finance for Oakland Schools, shared the budget. I don't know if anybody on the board was able to attend the board presentation for that as well, but Michelle did a good job, and I would recommend approving their budget.
Do we have a recommendation? Mrs. Haynes.
Be it resolved that the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education approves an Oakland Schools ISD budget as presented in the board packet.
Is there a second? Ms. Jasinski. Is there any discussion on the agenda item? Seeing none, I'd like to call for a vote.
Trustee Cook.
Yes.
Trustee Jasinski.
Yes.
Trustee Haynes.
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander.
Yes.
And Trustee Jaworski.
Yes.
So it's that time of year we're discussing the state budget. So as of now, we are planning for a student enrollment to be flat. I did hear today that Mr. Walensky believes that we might be up 20 students, so that's good news. That there's a change in the PA 152, which is the hard cap on our employees' health insurance. It's only going up 0.02%. This year, which means that the school year is July 1 to June 30, but the benefit year is January to December. So that's only a 0.01% increase to our budget for next year, which is about $10,000. The retirement rates for next year have not been published yet, so I was not able to include that in my presentation. And as we get that available, I will certainly add that to our figures. The collective bargaining agreement cost increase, and we do have a wage reopener with the paraprofessional secretarial unit, which is ROESA, but I've included the steps just so that we have an ability to look at what our costs were, but we do have that those negotiations beginning soon. So ROASA, about $158,000 increase. The ROEA, which is our teachers and ancillary staff, just above $2.1 million. ROESA, which is the secretarial and para unit, $23,000, and then the non-rep, which includes the rest of us, which is about $113,000. We used to include a much larger number when we had retirements. Now it's about $20,000 a year that we save when we have a retirement, because many of our teachers that we have been hiring over the last couple of years come to us with many years of experience. So they're granted some steps. So there's an ability to adjust staffing to enrollment ratios. We have been working really hard at the cabinet level, looking at class sizes and program additions. So some of that, we look at $120,000 for up and down, but we're not complete yet on class sizes and program additions at this point. We have third-party contracts as well. All of those contracts are in force for the 24-25 years, so these are actual numbers. Durham will go up about $39,000. Maintenance, custodial, and grounds, which is ABM, about $71,000. SafeEd, which we have at Royal Oak High School and Royal Oak Middle School, about $8,000. Oakland Schools Technology, just over $10,000. And so all of those items, and we always start at the current year structural deficit. So the last time we passed a budget, which was in March, we had a structural deficit of $1.1 million. I do think that we won't end at 1.1 as we're working through this last amendment, which you will see in June. It'll probably be less than that. Just because we know there's 21 budget owners, not everybody uses every penny that they're given in their budget. But those items that I just went over, plus the structural deficit, we're looking at a net impact of about $4.3 million structural deficit going into the next school year. Just want to go over some of the numbers that we have seen so far out of the governor, state, and House. The governor is recommending $241 increase in the foundation allowance, the House $217, and the Senate $302. I use a base number of about 5,000 students, so that would be an increase under the governor of $1.2 million, the House $1 million, and the Senate $1.5. I just wanted to point out that 31AA, which is that newer grant that we have that we use for safety and mental health, roughly about 50% to each of those. I just wanted to include that it is in all three budgets still moving forward, so that's good news, because for us, I believe that's about $1.1 million. So that there's a lot of items that we have in that budget. 31A is something that just the last 2 years we've had full access to as a hold harmless district. All three branches have included that, actually going up a little bit depending on which one, but it's at this point it's small, so I didn't include the numbers, but I just wanted to share the fact that it is still there and at the same funding as last year. Once again, we have quite a few staff members funded through 31A, which is our at-risk funding. 20F is a grant that we are losing. It was for hold harmless districts, and it's about $500,000. So that's quite a loss to our budget. Just wanted to point that out. And then something else that I was reading about when I was looking at the three budgets, I just want to once again point out 30D, which is our universal breakfast and lunch. Our participation has been so high due to this program. It's been wonderful for the children. All of the principals talk about how many kids are coming in, even for breakfast now. We had to add some additional breakfast monitors just to make sure that the kids were safe in the cafeterias in the morning. So that is really great news that we're that participation is so high and included at the current cost. So the state had already increased that, and they are funding it at that same level. So that's good news. So those are the revenue impacts. Are that we are up $700,000 with the governor, $500,000 with the House, and $1 million with the Senate. And that's kind of where it leaves our budget, right? 3.1, still structural deficit with the governor, 3.6 with the House, and 3.1 with the Senate. So, outstanding items, state budget. So next Friday, May 17th, is the May revenue consensus hearing. More things will really start to heat up after that once they have those final numbers. We have the contract negotiations, as I mentioned, that Mr. Walensky and I will work on with ROESA. The retirement rate increases are not published yet, and then any staffing changes that will come through will have not been included yet in the budget. Are there any questions? All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Bella. We're going to on to agenda item 9.5, which is our staff and student services report. I'd like to ask Mr. Walensky for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Jaworski. As my colleagues, Ms. Abella and Dr. Ioannis have shared, we're entering a very busy time of year planning for next year. We've been meeting more than we ever do the rest of the year about staffing changes and enrollment projections and the resources to serve our students. So a lot to come in the next few months. I have 2 items on tonight's agenda for your approval and 1 update that I'll go over. Item 9.5.1 for your approval is a list of our personnel changes since we last met. They're going to continue to get a little bit longer each month. On tonight's report is a list of 10 changes since we last met, which includes 4 resignations, 2 retirements, 1 termination, 1 non-renewal, and 2 recommendations for hire. The recommendations for hire are for Bestina Lawrence, a counselor, the counseling office secretary for Royal Oak High School, and Charles Olson, a paraprofessional for Northwood, which we're always excited to hire paraprofessionals. Those are the 2 recommendations for hire. Of the 8 people leaving the district, 5 will be leaving at the end of the year. Those are some of the staffing changes we know and plan for. The 2 retirements come from Barb Sparks, both from my department. Barb Sparks, our pupil accountant, who's been with Royal Oak since August of 1999, and Gina Harwood, our enrollment coordinator, who's been with the district since March of 2017. Both will be retiring effective July 31st, and as you can imagine, they work very closely together, very crucial to the enrollment process. So although we have a little bit of time, those are 2 positions we want to get posted and fill sooner than later so they can overlap and do some training. But that's tonight's report, those 10 changes, item 9.5.1 for your approval.
Do we have a recommendation?
What does that mean, non-renewal of that position at the high school?
It's not elimination of the position, it's non-renewal of a person. that we're terminating their employment.
Okay, so
effective
it's a
June 30th.
termination. Okay, thank you.
Can we have a recommendation? Mrs. Anderson.
Resolved, the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education approves the regular personnel changes as presented in the board packet.
Do we have a second? Mrs. Cook. Any discussion on the agenda item? Seeing none, I'd like to call for the vote.
Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Haynes?
Sure.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, the second item on tonight's agenda for your approval is item 9.5.2, something we talked about before. It's a letter of understanding with the Royal Oak Education Association regarding the collection of dues on their behalf. And I talked about this before in a facilities and finance meeting. The collection of union dues became a prohibited subject of bargaining in 2011, and we have not done that on their behalf since before 2011. Recently, most of those prohibited subjects, of which collection of dues was one, were repealed, and the ROEA has requested that we reinstitute that on their behalf. It's fairly simple for us to do. It's a payroll deduction. It's something we process through payroll. They give us a list of people that want to be members. We collect their dues and then reimburse the ROEA. Because our contract is absent language about this, we just need a letter of understanding to reinstitute that. And that's what that is for.
Here, recommendation, Mrs. Cook.
Resolved, the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education approves the ROEA Letter of Understanding regarding payroll deduction for dues as presented in the board package.
Do you have a second? Mrs. Haynes. Is there any discussion on the agenda item? Seeing none, I'd like to call for the vote.
Trustee Haynes?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Jaworski?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
And Trustee Jasinski?
Yes.
And this motion passes. Last one.
All right, I just have one quick update. As I said earlier, we monitor enrollment quickly, and before tonight's meeting, I just projected from Isabella. I said, I think we're going to be up a little bit in enrollment, which is a good thing because that impacts our general fund quite significantly. We already know of 6 positions we need to fill, but we also monitor enrollment very carefully when we plan our staffing needs. So enrollment opened February 1st, and to date we have the biggest change in our enrollment K through 12 is always through kindergarten, incoming kindergarten children. To date, we have 352 children enrolled for kindergarten and 85 enrolled for developmental kindergarten, which is up. Last fall, we had 366 children enrolled for kindergarten. We're already at 352. And 87 enrolled for DK. We're already at 85. And we have months left to enroll. And we still have 36 kindergarten children who we've approved through schools of choice that just need to come in and fulfill the enrollment process. So assuming those 36 children, the parents of those 36 children do follow through with the enrollment process, my projection is we'll be up 22 children in kindergarten or more, which is good for us. And that's the one update I have as well.
Here for you. Thank you, Mr. Walensky. This brings us to agenda item number 10, which is the second opportunity for public comments. And seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 11, which is board comments and liaison reports. I'm going to ask Mrs. Anderson to present the ongoings in the Arts and Preservation Committee.
We had a very short meeting this week, and we are basically right now focusing on how to commemorate some artifacts in our community. Amy Murphy, our wonderful Amy Murphy, has got 2 plaques, and you can soon look out here. They're not. Is it there? Soon you can look right out in the board office here at the tile installation and learn all about where that came from. And there's one at Northwood that you will soon be able to see as well. There'll be plaques there. So that's what we're looking at, is how to commemorate various items around the district. And if you want to join our committee, we'd love to have you. Thank you.
All right, are there any questions or discussion for Mrs. Anderson or Mrs. Haynes? Fine. I'd like to ask Ms. Jasinski to give us an update on the Oakland Elementary 100th Anniversary Committee.
Yeah, things are moving along really well with the WOAK Oakland 100 Planning Committee. It's a really exciting project to be working on, and there's a lot of enthusiasm. We've divided it into some really there's no other word for it besides enthusiasm, sorry. Some really enthusiastic working groups and kind of committees within ourselves. We've got a group working on student engagement. We've got a group working on history. We've got a group working on how we're going to display different information through the decades around the whole building. We've got a tour group. And I've been lucky to be working on the actual ceremony part of the evening. So we just want everyone to hold that date on their calendar, September 20th. You don't have to have been a current student or former student to join us. I think it's going to be a really interesting opportunity. I think it's going to be just a great evening of celebration about great things with local history and our impact on the community and schools. It's just going to be a really fun night of some food and some celebration, and we get to you can tour the building, you can see the old parts and the new parts. We do have with the historians that we're working with, the front part of the building has the 4 original classrooms that are still in use, and then we're going to kind of walk through all of the changes and updates that the building has been through as it's adapted. So again, that's September 20th, 6 to 8 p.m. Everybody is invited. The ceremony itself is going to be right in the middle at 7 p.m. So we'll kind of take a little break, acknowledge the important people are there, shine kind of a spotlight on some of the current students, and then people can go back to just kind of mingling and enjoying the building. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Jasinski? Move on to board comments. Anybody have any comments? Excellent. See none and no further business in front of this body. We are adjourned.